Let's go through a sample rhetorical analysis essay from Eudora Welty's One Writer's Beginnings. The sample essay is based on one of College Board's AP English Language rhetorical analysis questions. This one is 2000's passage from Eudora Welty's work, One Writer's Beginnings. I made a video going over this passage as well, so review that one first to see the passage. Let's look at the sample essay's introduction. Appeasing the dragon and thanking the wolf. Looking back on the experiences that shape our life story, often our perceptions of them are clouded in nostalgia and our desire to make meaning out of seemingly small events. However, for Eudora Welty, in her autobiography titled One Writer's Beginnings, she recollects her early reading exposure with her mother and with her overcoming the obstacle of a mean librarian blocking her path to acquiring knowledge and escapism through books. These stories are significant since she later became a writer of fiction, and a successful one at that, an author with enough success and public interest to warrant an autobiography about her beginnings as a writer. Through her use of story elements that mimic aspects of children's narrative, as well as her reverent tone toward the act of reading, Welty demonstrates the intensity and value of her experiences in the library and with books. Let's take a look at this title, Appeasing the Dragon and Thanking the Wolf. I like that there's a title for the paper. When you have on-demand essays, you don't need a title, but a title often shows that thought went into it, and that's what we want to show. This title, Appeasing the Dragon, Thanking the Wolf, the dragon is Mrs. Calloway, the librarian. The wolf is her mother that she's thanking. At the end of the piece, we see that her mother role plays as the wolf. It's interesting, it's appropriate, it's correctly capitalized with our longer words here, getting the capital letter at the beginning. This is a solid start. It shows a reader that you have thought this through. The hook is a broad statement that will narrow to the thesis. We mentioned the author's name. We have the genre of the piece we're going to be looking at. We have the name of the piece. It's properly punctuated because we're typing. In this case, it is in italics. If we are writing by hand, it comes from a long work. Long works get lines, so it would be underlined. We provide context here. We connect to a larger significance, showing why that these stories that she's even telling were significant to her on her path to becoming a writer. Our thesis statement, it discusses overall rhetorical techniques and answers the prompt's question, connecting to how Welty chooses to show the intensity and value of her experiences. We're going to be looking at the use of her story elements that mimic aspects of children's narrative, and we're also going to be looking at the reverent tone she has toward the act of reading. And throughout that essay, our writer is going to keep connecting back to this thesis. First body paragraph of the essay. At the start of the passage, Welty swiftly characterizes Mrs. Calloway as a classic storybook villain. Doing this gives her an obstacle to overcome and reveals her familiarity with storybook conventions because, after all, she was an avid reader as a child and will go on to become a writer. Welty capitalizes library, lines 3, 10, 12, 38, both to show the importance of the library to her and as a stylistic effect that draws readers and provides the setting where the antagonist, Mrs. Calloway, dwells with her dragon eye, line 5, keeping away the public from ransacking her treasured books. By employing the fantasy story element of an intimidating dragon to metaphorically slay, Welty showcases how important these early memories were to her development, as she had to overcome this archetypal barrier. Welty uses language and structures reminiscent of these fairy tales, revealing that the early experiences with books shaped her writing and held great importance. This point is reiterated when later Welty mentions that Calloway was a witch, line 24. Childish diction she exerts in order to continue to relate to her audience of readers, who also are familiar with the fictitious archetypal portrayal of witches in children's storybooks, and to impress upon readers that as a child, this was the best way for Welty to characterize Calloway, as an antagonist, one obstructing her from her quest of acquiring more books. The paragraph begins with a transitional phrase indicating the writer is looking at the passage in chronological order, which is what we want to see, that we can see the line of reasoning develop. We have an example of an authorial intent verb, characterizes in this case, shows what the author is doing. We have commentary that connects to the thesis, explains the significance. We do have a mention of the line numbers that are being referenced. Our commentary shows the so what in the to show, connecting commentary back to example. We have short bits of textual evidence, only 2 words here. We don't have a long quotation you just plunked in the middle of your essay. We have more transitions signaling an addition here. We have a word in front of diction. Always have a descriptor connected to diction. The author doesn't use diction. That just means the author uses words. We know that. What type of diction? And we have another connection to our rhetorical situation here. Juxtaposed with the intimidation of Mrs. Calloway, who Welty never knew anyone who'd grown up in Jackson without being afraid of, lines 1-2, was Eudora Welty's mother, who was not afraid of Mrs. Calloway, line 21. Welty creates an antithetical structure throughout the rest of the passage and alternates between revealing the tyranny of Calloway in the first 2 paragraphs, introducing her mother in the 3rd, illustrating the rules of Calloway in the 4th, and ending with anecdotes of her mother, always with a book or newspaper. This structure highlights the differences between these 2 women who had a tremendous influence in the reading life of the future author. Whereas Calloway made her own rules about books, line 37, her mother shared the same insatiability surrounding reading, line 55. I want to look at some of the elements that are in a good body paragraph. A convincing body paragraph has a claim, evidence, and explanation. We have that labeled in color coded here. We have our claim in green that juxtaposed with the intimidation of Mrs. Calloway was Eudora Welty's mother. We have evidence. Now, in some cases, it's direct textual evidence. In this one line, we're using segments of 2 cited quotations, and I have them properly cited. We also have evidence that is a larger discussion of the actual structure of the passage. In this case, the discussion of the purpose of the structure of the passage to help convey its significance, going from our first body paragraphs to the 3rd paragraph to the 4th. I have not a quotation, but direct elements of the piece there for evidence. We also have explanation, the significance, the so what, why is this important, how does it connect back? That's what we have in pink here. And in good body paragraphs, we have all 3. Welty's attitudes surrounding books, which seemingly followed her into adulthood, since she became a writer of fiction, takes shape under the shadows of Mrs. Calloway and the support of her mother. The inclusion of her mother's dialogue and the assertion that as a child, Eudora could read any book, children or adult, line 26, shows readers that her mother believed that books should not be kept from a reader due to age, and reflected Welty's ongoing support from her mother, with the only exception being the Elsie Dinsmore series. Her mother not allowing the series to be read does seem to be based on her mother's own reading preferences. However, she does use the word impressionable to describe Eudora. By using the word impressionable, Welty's mother is aware that what a child learns during this time of her life can follow her, since children can be easily influenced. And Welty mentions that to help remind readers that she was impressionable. Her values are being shaped at the time. Ultimately, young Eudora was not learning from Elsie Dinsmore. She was learning from 2 people who valued reading. They just showed it very differently. Mrs. Calloway was protecting her books from people. Welty's mother was inviting young Eudora into the world of readers. Some elements I want to highlight in this paragraph is that we continue to have a claim and a connection to the rhetorical situation. In this case, it's connecting the author to the message and purpose. I also wanted to point out this use of the word Eudora. Our author's name is Eudora Welty. Usually, we do not use just a first name when referring to an author. You wouldn't call William Shakespeare William. This usage of Eudora, just the first name, refers to that character of young Eudora Welty in the anecdotes. So in our writing, we're still holding true to that using an author's last name, but because she's referring to her younger self, we have this idea of a young Eudora in this piece, so it works. This word ultimately. The word ultimately can help a writer pull in that broader context to the analysis of the quotation, which could help the writer earn that AP sophistication point new to the rubric. Let's look at these last two body paragraphs together. Mrs. Calloway created obstacles, and Eudora overcame them. So much so that she read children's books like Bunny Brown and His Sister Sue at Camp Rest a While, and the novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, lines 48-49. By mentioning these specific books as diverse as they are, Welty shows the devouring wish to read, line 50, that had been created in her, and the fear that she might have once had of Mrs. Calloway has been replaced by the fear of books coming to an end, lines 53-54. Welty's mother serves as a positive example for her, since she constantly models the life of a reader. Like Welty's diverse reading interests growing up, her mother also reads with breadth. She read Darwin's The Origin of Species, line 58, no light read, while she waited for bread to bake. She picked up The Man in Lower 10, line 62, while her daughter's hair curled. By mentioning these specific books and including the anecdote at the end about her mother reading the newspaper and doing character voices while with her grandchildren, Welty signifies how her mother reading has served as an unchanging factor for her, a paradigm that she has imitated and expounded on, since Eudora Welty grew from a consumer of text into a writer of fiction. The essay writer continues to move through the passage chronologically, making claims about what the writer, Eudora Welty, is doing, using small bits of textual evidence and having commentary that connects to the claim, examines the significance / importance of the rhetorical choices, and connects to the rhetorical situation, which is the circumstances of the communication, like author, audience, context, exigence, message, purpose. And down over here, we have an example of some really solid commentary. This commentary displays that intensity and value of the early reading experiences Welty had and connects them to later in her life. Let's take a look at this conclusion. Ultimately, through echoing elements of children's stories and with the use of an admiring tone toward the act of reading and toward her mother's modeling of reading, Eudora Welty shares the important moments in her journey of becoming a writer. At the time of publishing her autobiography, the United States is embroiled in the ideas of school reform and increasing rigor and testing in classrooms. By contrast, Eudora Welty shows what her most memorable education was: simply reading books. This is a short conclusion, but it does get to the point. We have ideas that echo the thesis statement without just directly repeating it. However, the writer here is establishing the main claim one more time at the end. The very end connects back to the rhetorical situation, context and exigence, just bringing everything together. One aspect of this paper is that there are a few instances when the essay writer uses something called the known new contract, and we see this a lot in linguistics. The simplified version is that you start with something the reader knows in your sentence, then you connect new information to the known information, either in the same sentence or in subsequent sentences. It will help you with your reader's comprehension of your line of reasoning and can increase your credibility and persuasiveness. Some examples of the known new contract in this essay. By employing the fantasy story element of an intimidating dragon to metaphorically slay, Welty showcases how important these early memories were to her development as she had to overcome this archetypal barrier. We have the known content at the beginning and then the new. You see that I have the word by employing, by mentioning a couple of times here. Oftentimes that's an indicator that known information is being presented. And then new information, a claim, a connection is being established by the writer. So I just wanted to point that aspect to you of this paper and perhaps see if you can try to utilize that in your own writing. There's no one way to write a rhetorical analysis essay. In fact, if you write about the same moments from a passage as another writer, it's often a red flag for a teacher. Look at samples for support, perhaps after you write an essay, or to help you write to a different passage, and address elements in the passage that you find. And don't turn in a sample essay to your teacher and pass it as your own. I've had students turn in a sample essay to me that I wrote and posted. So, besides being a sloppy shortcut, there are resources you can go to for help and not to copy. You've got this.